Hey, it's Cavallo from datingfire.com and datingadviceguru.com. You know, a lot of people believe that long-distance relationships are a bad idea. In fact, if you know what you're doing with a few good long-distance relationship tips from yours truly, you can actually make it work. And as a matter of fact, long-distance relationships can work just as good and even better than regular relationships. Who knew? Well, that's what we're talking about today. 10 long-distance relationship tips, how to make it work. Hey, before we get started today, I want you to make sure to stick around to the end of the video. I've got a special bonus tip that you have to know. It's one of the most critical things that you have to learn about long-distance relationships. It's about why they fail. And I'm going to tell you that number one reason at the end. Oh, and stick around till after the credits too, because I got a little surprise there for you. So what is a long-distance relationship? Well, one of the most important things to define is what makes long-distance relationships long-distance. Is it the time or is it the actual distance between you? Well, I believe it's a little bit of both. Here's my sort of scientific definition. You're in a long-distance relationship if it takes longer than 2 hours to get to the other person's house, either by car or by plane. Or if you feel like you're just not that close to him, really. I mean, ultimately, your heart has to agree. If you don't feel like he's close enough for you to hold and love in person, well, then you are definitely long distance. Heck, maybe you even feel that he's just too far away emotionally. In that case, you still need to close that distance with him, don't you? So let's start with a few of the most common long-distance relationship problems. Problem number one is not enough contact. Obviously, right? One of the easiest things to do is fall down on your communication with him. This one's easy to fix, but it's also easy to screw up. Just remember that the answer is not always more communication. Sometimes it really is the quality of the communication you've got with him. There's a balance you have to strike here. Problem number two, not enough balance. Again, another problem coming in long-distance relationships is when you don't keep good balance of your regular life to your long-distance romance life. Way back when, I had a long-distance relationship with somebody that was halfway across the United States. And I remember that I eventually got way too invested in it. I didn't balance all the other stuff I had to do in my life, like exercising, self-growth, and just all the other regular day-to-day stuff. It was a valuable lesson for me to learn. And of course, this video would be way too long if I tried to cover everything. The other problems you can get in the article. You can go over to datingfire.com and check that out. I'm skipping forward to problem number 5, emotional panic. Now, I've been hinting at this one a little bit so far, but the most likely thing that's going to sabotage your long-distance relationship is your insecurities. If you go into an emotional panic because you suddenly think he's cheating on you or he's mad at you or any number of other barriers that come up because of insecurities, well, that could end your relationship real quick. You need to know exactly how to handle this situation when it comes up. Again, this is something I cover in my new program, Long Distance Love, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So let's get into the tips. Let's get into how you can survive your long distance relationship and make it thrive. Tip number 1, watch out for trying to stay too connected. One of the things most people do when they're in a long distance relationship is they try to simulate being there in person with him all the time, right? And that's not a good idea, mostly because it will make him feel smothered. And it will also make you fatigued and stressed to the max. It's hard to balance communication in a relationship. You want to communicate enough, but not too much, and definitely not too little, right? So the best thing you can do is to simply play it very casually. You don't have to have a call or even a text every single day, but you should at least agree on what you consider to be the minimum so that both of you feel like you're not going to be anxious about where the relationship is standing. The most likely contaminant to your relationship is when you feel like the other person is slipping away from you and then you start to panic, right? This is the worst threat to your relationship and it's one that you have to watch out for. Tip number 2, bring out the bright side. One of the worst ways to handle a relationship is to be viewing it as already one step down or suffering. In other words, you can't look at your relationship as already being challenged right off the bat. You're already one down. That's why it's key for you to look at this distance as actually being an opportunity, not a setback. There are plenty of opportunities there if you know where to look for them. For one, I'll give you an example here. This distance means you can communicate more effectively over the distance. You'll learn how to resolve things through communication that you wouldn't develop if you guys were actually together because you might gloss over it. You wouldn't work as hard on the communication. Tip number 3, Be regular though, okay? You also can't go in the other direction and neglect your partner. So make sure that you are regular with your communications. Make sure you at least talk or converse directly with each other at least every couple of days. You don't have to text or call every day, but you do need to make sure that you feel connected enough that missing a day won't feel weird or make you anxious. Tip number 4, keep the sexy times moving. One of the most important things you have to make up for is the lack of real physical sexual contact between you and him. It's also one of the areas where you will most likely feel the stress and anxiety. Make sure you're sending lots of, dirty text messages, sexy voicemails, naughty emails. You got to push that edge. You have to keep the flames of sexual tension hot. And the way to do it is to make sure you're playful and naughty with your communications as much as you possibly can. Never pass up an opportunity to throw in something suggestive with a double meaning. Sure, it's a little bit like watching a Beavis and Butthead episode, but that kind of fun is essential to keeping things hot in your relationship. Tip number 5, make sure you have some ground rules. Plain and simple, you gotta have some structure to your relationship if you're gonna keep it going over a distance. Now, of course, the rules should be set up so that both of you win, right? Make sure you take into consideration each of your needs, his and yours, and the frequency. If you need a phone call every day, ask him if he can do that much. You might not get a couple hours with him every day, but the regularity will keep you feeling much more calmer and less anxious. See, rules are necessary to make sure that neither one of you falls into bad habits and bad patterns. A mature couple should be able to talk about your history and the things you've discovered that made it difficult in your past relationships. So talk about that now. It's essential. Tip number 6, watch out for the texting. One of the biggest mistakes that women make in long-distance relationships is when they rely too much on texting. Guys do this too. It's both sides. Texting is very unsatisfying. It is, and it's also very easy to get addicted to it, thinking that it's a loving connection. In fact, what happens is you tend to over-communicate in text to make up for the fact that you're not talking in real life. Texting is actually very sterile when you get down to it, and most men don't really enjoy constant texting. We don't. You might get a little charge out of it yourself, but when you rely too much on texting, it's going to sabotage your relationship. And you're going to find you're going to get too caught up in, did he text me back? Did he text me back? You're going to check your phone constantly if you're not already. Try to set up the ground rules for texting as well. Find out how he feels about it and let him know where you stand, okay? Tip number 7, share a personal gift. One of the best things you can do is send him a personal gift of some kind, something that he can carry with him that reminds him of you. And he should do the same thing back. We tend to invest emotional energy in certain personal knickknacks. And one of the best things you can do is give him something that he can invest himself in while he's not around you, okay? It'll have sentimental meaning. Tip number 8, beware social media. Oh God, if I had to say this once, I've had to say it a million times. While you do want to stay connected on social media, you don't want to become reliant on it. You might have noticed that it's easy to make up your own stories about what's going on with a person based on what you see on Facebook, right? But the reality is that isn't their life. It's just a digital representation of it, and it's going to mislead you every time. Tip number 9, don't forget the bummers. It's important to share the things that aren't that positive, honestly. You might feel like you should only be communicating the positive stuff, right? But the negative stuff is actually, that's reality. You'd be encountering that if he was there with you. So keep in mind, we don't post a lot of the negative things that happened in our Facebook because, well, who wants to air their dirty laundry on social media? That's mostly a good thing, but it's also very unrealistic. Bummers happen to everybody, which is another reason to have a way to vent them with your partner. You have to be able to talk about the difficult stuff as well as the good stuff. That's how your communication gets better. Tip number 10, finally, keep your non-relationship life active. It's tempting to focus completely on your long-distance relationship as if it were your only relationship, but that's a surefire way to totally destroy it. You've got to balance your life. Even if he was in the same city as you or right next door to you, you'd still have to take care of the day-to-day, right? Like shopping and the rest of the stuff in your life. So don't neglect your non-romantic relationships. Stay connected to your friends. Stay connected to your family. Go out with your friends and hang out. Don't feel guilty because he's not with you. You've got a life. You got to live it. And finally, my bonus tip here, this one's really important. You got to have a plan. By far, one of the most important things you need to do to succeed in a long-distance relationship is you got to have a plan. A simple plan for how you're going to make the relationship work and how you're eventually going to get together when all this is said and done. That's the goal, right? You want to be together in the same place, same city. Well, this isn't just a tip. This is also the #1 reason that most long-distance relationships fail. Long-distance relationships fail when they don't have a plan to get together. Eventually, you know you want to be with him, and he probably wants to be with you too, right? But in reality, most long-distance relationships end after just a few months. Now, they don't end just because of the distance, and they don't end because someone cheated either. Long-distance relationships end because neither person knew how to keep it moving forward, how to keep it going and make this plan work. Now, the goal is easy. Fall in love, get together, move in, or get married, right? It's pretty simple, but almost nobody knows how to go from meeting to making a long-distance relationship into a short-distance love affair. If you want to know how to do that, I've got a great way for you to do that. See this little link below me here? That's right. That's datingfire.com/LDR. That's datingfire.com/LDR. That is the link to go check out my long distance love program. You can make him love you no matter how far away. You see, I spent months researching and pulling together all the success habits of the long distance relationships that worked, where the people finally got together and they finally got married and it all worked out. And I found out all the key factors that make these relationships work instead of fail. There are dozens of important strategies that work, and you got to know what they are. And there's a lot more that don't work that you have to avoid. I put them all in one easy-to-use reference for you, and you can basically download all of these essential methods right into your head in a matter of a few hours. And you'll be able to make him love you no matter how far away he is. You can go grab the program right now. You can go download it at datingfire.com/LDR. Go check it out right now. Look, this is critical. There's nothing more challenging than making a long-distance relationship work if you don't know what makes it work. That's the thing. That's the trick that most people don't ever find out is, how do you make it work? It doesn't work like a regular relationship in your town. And it won't work, I guarantee you, if all you're relying on is texting him every morning, good morning. It's not going to be enough. You've got to learn all the essential tricks and tips that make men stay focused and stay engaged with you. Yes, because men will lose interest if they aren't triggered to stay attached to you. And this is another thing that I show women how to do is, how do you flip that switch in a guy that makes him just go gaga over you? I'm just, basically infatuated with you. What is that switch and how do you trip it in a man? And it's so critical because most women can't teach this. Most women have never experienced this firsthand, so they don't know what it is that's going on inside a guy. What is it that makes a man love you? What is it that makes him really feel that deep, heartfelt connection to you, that makes him want to open up, that makes him want to share his emotions, that makes him want to share his life with you? It's really important, because if you don't know what it is, you're almost guaranteed you're not going to be able to make it work. And that's what I want you to learn, is how to do this. This way you'll solve this once and for all, and you'll never have this problem again. Wouldn't that be great? Go check it out. Go on over to datingfire.com/LDR. Hey, this is Cavallo from datingfire.com. Before you run away, I know you love this one. I know you stuck around this long because you can't get enough, so why not get more? Go ahead and click the like button, then subscribe, because this is good stuff. You're going to want to get it every week. Make sure you turn on the little notification, the little bell icon next to that button. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to suggest a video, leave that in the comment section below. Hey, this is Cavallo from datingfire.com/LDR, long distance relationship. Get it? Go on over, check it out. As always, live and love with passion. Hey, you stuck around to the end. I got to give you one more of those problems that you didn't know with long distance relationships that you've got to be able to spot early on. It's called the urgent answer syndrome. Another big problem in a long distance relationship is expecting a guy to respond to you immediately every time you text. You got to keep a realistic view of things when you're in a long distance relationship. He's not always going to be available for you, and you're not always going to be available for him. So watch out for the urgent answer syndrome, where you panic and he doesn't respond right away, or he panics when you don't respond right away. Don't let yourself fall victim to anxiety, because that's how a lot of long distance relationships end. When somebody panics, and then that feedback loop happens and you eventually drive the other person away. Don't let that one happen. And hey, since you're finishing off here, make sure you go on over to datingfire.com/LDR. That's datingfire.com/LDR. I'll talk to you next time.